Okay.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, 8 to 10 a.m., Wednesday through Sunday. You can see our Facebook shows on Mac Sports and Northeast Streaming Sports Network Facebook page, with our platforms also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, follow, comment, share, and subscribe when possible. Check out the website at macandjacksports.com called Mac's Insiders for information on weekly guests, articles, team porter, public relations updates, a list of shows on Northeast Streaming Sports, and our great sponsors with links to their products and services. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. Good morning, Jack. How are you doing?
Good morning.
And today, folks, we have our Saturday guest that comes in almost every Saturday. He hasn't hardly missed any with us, Dr. Paul Semendinger, founder of the popular Yankees blog, Start Spreading the News, also an award-winning author with Scattering the Ashes, and our all-around Yankees expert and historian. And, guys, today we had a lot of I should say last night, we had a lot of Yankees news, and we'll get to that in a minute. But with your sports update really quick, the Falcons signed offensive coordinator from the Titans, Arthur Smith, as their head coach, starting keeping that head coach merry-go-round going as they're hiring and firing people. Wide receiver Josh Gordon had his reinstatement rescinded to continue his suspension. The Nets fined Kyrie Irving, $50,000, and he has to forfeit $816,899 for those 2 games missed. In the NBA locals, the Celtics beat the Magic 124-97. The Cavs beat the Knicks 106-103. And in the NHL, the locals, the Flyers, beat the Penguins 5-2, and the Capitals get by the Sabres 2-1. The NFL games today, we have the Rams on versus Green Bay at 4:35. And the Ravens, they'll be playing tonight against Buffalo at 8:15. So in baseball, guys, we have a lot of different things that have come up. They're still thinking and discussing the universal DH, maybe expanding the playoffs for 2021. What's your guys' thoughts on that? Jack, you first. What do you think about it?
My thoughts on the Yankee news.
We'll get to the Yankee news in a minute.
But the universal DH is, they've talked about it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's so inevitable to me that it's not a hot topic per se, because I think we've been debating, not you and I, but baseball people have been debating it for years and years and years. And I think they've agreed the time has come that you have to be the same in both leagues, the American and the National League. There was a time where we really differentiated both leagues. But since interleague play, the mystique of the American League against the National League is wore off. You can remember, Mac, when we were kids, the way we used to argue which was the better league. And it was brutal to me as a young man watching the American League lose all those all-star games year after year after year. Now the American League wins every all-star game for whatever, reason. But it's inevitable. The DH is going to be here to stay. Whether it's a good thing or not, that we could seriously debate.
So how about the expanded playoffs, Jack? I don't like it already with the extra wild cards.
I agree with you. I don't like it, Mac, because it doesn't crown necessarily a true World Series champion in the sense that we're going to have the best team. Because baseball is the one sport anyone could beat anyone. If I put the Brooklyn Cyclones against the New York Yankees and let them play 25 times, odds are the Cyclones are going to win a game out of the 25. They'll manage to nab a game one way or the other. And you're not going to get that in other sports. I can't put my alma mater, Brooklyn College, against the weakest NBA team and them having a prayer of ever winning. They're going to get blown out at every single game. But something about baseball, no pun intended, but the playing field really is more level than any other sport.
And how about you, Jack? What do you think about the universal DH? I mean, listen, the purists out there I know don't like it. They'd rather use the pitcher as a hitter, make the other team maybe pull the pitcher early, because they need the runs. I mean, there's a whole strategy built around that, whether it's a sacrifice bunt. And they actually had good hitting pitchers at one time, believe it or not. And so with this specializing and going to DH, what are your thoughts on that?
All right. So obviously, as a Yankee fan, growing up my whole life as an American League fan, I'm a fan of the DH. I never watched baseball without it. But, sometimes we hold fast to traditions that are way out of date and way out of time. There's no DH anywhere. There's not a DH in the minor leagues. There's not usually, pitchers don't hit in the minor leagues. There's a DH everywhere. Right. And it's silly for the National League to then make pitchers try to hit. They can't. They don't. They hit under like 200, 100, 150. What bothers me is when the American League teams have to play the National League teams and give up their DH. That's what drives me up the wall. If the National League team doesn't want to have a DH, well, then let your pitcher hit. But if the Yankees have to play interleague ball or any American League team, and they come into a National League city and they have to have their pitchers hit, that's just a competitive disadvantage for the American League team. We remember a number of years ago, the career of Chien-Ming Wang was basically wrecked because he had to run the bases. This is a guy who's never run the bases in his whole life. And all of a sudden he has to hit in the major leagues against major league pitching and run the bases against other major league players. And he hurt himself. Then a couple of years ago, Masahiro Tanaka hurt himself running the bases. And it's just silly. I'm absolutely for the universal DH. I don't want to watch pitchers hit. I don't think that's great strategy. Watching a guy try to lay down a bunt, that's not exciting to me. And again, they have the DH everywhere, and they ought to just keep it, bring it to the National League and keep it there now that they had it.
Well, Doc, what do you say about people that will say, well, cry me a river, let the pitchers start becoming athletes too? I mean, Mariano Rivera could have played outfield. He was a pretty good hitter too.
He hurt himself, Mac, in the outfield.
I understand. I understand that, Jeff. But what I'm saying is, why are we making a special thing for the pitchers? Well, hey, you don't have to train. You don't have to run. You don't have to learn how to hit. We're just okay. You just go out there and pitch. I mean, what other sport does that? What other sport has?
Football has place kickers.
That's true, but I'll tell you right now, if they got to also tackle the return guy when he's coming back, when he breaks through, so he's got to learn to tackle. He's also might have to run with the ball now and then. So I mean, they still have to be athletes. Why is baseball so special?
I think the argument you're making is that the pitcher then isn't an athlete. I think the job of the pitcher is so specialized and it's so different than any other position on the field as well. But I don't think we're babying the pitcher. I think that the DH has been around since 1973, and it's made its way into every level of baseball. And these guys haven't ever hit, except when they were little and maybe playing little league or things like that. So you can't expect that somebody who didn't hit throughout college, somebody who didn't hit throughout the minor leagues, to then all of a sudden be able to hit at the major leagues.
How many times have we seen players asked to bunt, and you get the impression watching them they've never bunted in their whole life? yet in a big game situation, they're asked to sacrifice someone. You see it constantly, and they look inept while they're bunting. Speaking of the complete athlete with a pitcher, I know on reflection this sounds crazy, but Gil Hodges used Tom Seaver a number of times as a pinch runner. Now, can you imagine in this day and age, imagine Aaron Boone using Garrett Cole as a pinch runner. He would get lynched in the media. He might lose his job. But at that time, it was normal. Tom Seaver, pinch runner.
You bring that up, but guess what? Ron Guidry used to pinch run for the Yankees. And you know something? I mean, Billy Martin did it, and that was the best pitcher on the staff. So, again, I understand what you both are saying, but I also understand that there's going to be some purists out there who really believe that a pitcher should also be part of the team and be able to hit, be able to run and field. And when you see, some of the pitchers that are out there that can't field the ball anymore and that, have to be called in certain circumstances to play right now, they can't do it. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yes, the pitcher is very valuable. But when a quarterback throws an interception, guess what? He's supposed to go tackle the guy that intercepted the ball.
My prediction is down the line, you guys might hate this, they're going to be specialized players. You might have your 8 position players outside of the pitcher and 9 batters. Basically, you might have a bunch of DHs, your best 9 hitters on the team, and you might have a guy playing just second base all game, but he doesn't hit at all. That's what I think we're going to come down to someday.
That's when I stopped watching baseball totally, Jack. What do you think about the playoff expansion, Doc? Do you think it's a good idea to make more teams relevant at the end of the year to draw interest from the teams in that area to bring their ratings up because they're playing like Major League Baseball thinks? Or do you think it just waters down the process like a lot of other sports do?
I think it waters down. I agree with everything Jack was saying before. The thing about baseball is they play 162 games, and it's supposed to be a marathon. It's supposed to really weed out the best teams at the very end who then battle in the playoffs. And we've all seen that the playoffs, anything can happen in the playoffs. Worse teams beat better teams. And so the more opportunities for worse teams to beat better teams by expanding playoffs, again, puts into question, is the world champion truly the best team in baseball that year? So I'm for less playoffs.
Well, look at last year. The Dodgers had to play the Milwaukee Brewers. The Dodgers had the best record in baseball, and the Brewers, I forgot their record. It was around 500. So it may have even been under. I mean, and look at the Astros last year. They went 29-31, under 500, and they made a serious run towards the World Series.
They sure did.
Yeah.
I agree with you both. I think that Major League Baseball is one of the few sports that have that many games. I mean, you could throw basketball in there. I think their system is really terrible. I think it should be limited to like the top, 4 to 6 teams get it in there, and it waters down to me. Basketball gets watered down by the playoffs as well as baseball does.
Now, Matt, just one thing. In basketball, we know an 8th seed, let's say the Knicks sneak into the playoffs, they don't have a prayer winning the NBA title.
Very true.
We know the teams, the lowest seeds, aren't going to have a chance. So their whole season comes down to making the playoffs. And it's always the elite teams who are there at the end. But in baseball, that might not be the case.
Very true. Very true. So, guys. Yes, sir. The New York Yankees, we have some big news about them, and we'll be doing our Yankees poll and Yankees trivia right after this. The Yanks signed DJ LeMahieu to a 6-year, $90 million contract. And let's go one by one here. We got time. Listen, when we broke it yesterday, Jack, about the rumors, and when we were kind of on top of it, we knew there was a deal that was going to be had. It was just the specifics of the deal that had to be worked out. The $90 million for 6 years, a lot of people say that's quite a deal for a superstar like DJ LeMahieu, who is a Golden Glove defensive player, one of the best hitters in the game right now. And it looked like to me, and from when I was following the process, and believe it or not, I do have some connections within the Yankee organization with their PR department. It looked like he was looking for more years instead of a 3 or 4 year contract. Well, he got it. And it's a lot of people feel this is not a big price, $90 million. I still don't get that. That still makes me laugh. Heck of a deal for the Yankees in today's market. And DJ LeMahieu stays where he wanted to stay, folks.
Well,
So
two things. Either we have Collusion back again, or the market is completely changed because of the lack of revenue coming in because of the lack of fans. I was shocked the Yankees were able to get him at that price for that amount of years. And for all the talk, well, the Yankees don't want to go 6 years. They didn't want to go 5 years with him. And there's a reason why, because of the back end of the contract. He was older, but it was such a nice price for the Yankees. The Yankee logic may have been, look, $90 million for 4 years would be stretching it a little bit, but it's not so bad. But we have a couple of additional years, at the end of it. And who knows how that contract's going to work out. DJ LeMahieu might have 2 or 3 great years, and it might be so-so after that. You can never tell. So it might wind up being a good contract for him when all is said and done. But I'm shocked another team wouldn't come in and offer the same $90 million for even 4 or 5 years. So yeah, obviously DJ LeMahieu really wanted to stay as a Yankee, and it was important to him. And ultimately he bent, or maybe he just wasn't getting other offers coming in. And we're in the middle of January, and spring training begins next month. So players are getting a little antsy in all. So what's this going to say for Francisco Lindor with the Mets next year going forward? He might not get the contract he's envisioning.
Well, let's get Doc's thoughts on the signing of DJ LeMahieu. Doc, what do you think about this? Is it good for both parties? Better for the Yankees? Better for DJ? What do you think?
I think they're both got what they wanted. DJ wanted a longer contract. He wanted to be paid into his late 30s. Supposedly, and that's what he got. The Yankees did not want to spend over $100 million. They didn't want him to be a $20 million a year ball player. And it seems like a nice compromise. I mean, $90 million is a lot of money. DJ's taken care of now for the rest of his life. He gets his big payday. He's enjoyed being a Yankee, and he gets to stay a Yankee, and he gets to make a lot of money. Now, on the show, and we've talked about this, and I've written a lot, that I didn't want the Yankees to go 5 or 6 years because, again, I thought he was going to command $20 million a year. And I just was afraid that he was going to then tie the Yankees' hands for a long time forward by having just another albatross contract, because I don't know how great he'll be. He's entering the years that will be his decline. And there's a lot of second basemen who, right around the age 33 or 34, for whatever reason, fall off the cliff. And you just say, boy, if we're going to be paying him $20 million for a couple more years, and if he's only going to be a 280 hitter with 11 home runs, that's a lot of money for a player like that. But at $15 million, he fits in, and it's not going to prevent the Yankees from being able to make bigger deals down the road. Ultimately, yeah. Go on.
Doc, sorry, go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, ultimately, I don't really care what the Yankees pay him, and I want every player to make as much money as they possibly can, of course, right? The thing that I care about is how much his contract prohibits the team from getting the next guy. And I think at $15 million a year, it's not going to prevent the Yankees from making other big deals that come down the road.
Well, I mean, it doesn't prevent them. They would have to pay a luxury tax. I mean, they've done it in the past. Teams have done it in the past to build a contender or to build a winner. But I understand definitely what you're saying. You want to keep it under luxury tax best as possible for the best players. And we do have a couple contracts out there right now, Stan being one of them, that is very unfavorable to us. So we get Corey Kluber, two-time Cy Young Award winner, for a 1 year $11 million deal. To me, that says bye to Tanaka. He's probably our second in our rotation. We'll see what Severino does. What do you think, Jack?
I don't think it necessarily means they're saying goodbye to Tanaka because this Kluber signing is fantastic. He's been injured the last couple of years, but in 2018 he was an All-Star, a Cy Young Award winner before that. So I think it's a really good deal for the Yankees, a 1-year contract. Let's see how it works. Keep in mind the Angels signed Matt Harvey couple of years ago to a 1-year, $11 million contract as well, and that didn't work out. But it's a 1-year risk, and Severino's going to come back during the year. So you figure Cole, Severino, if Kluber is healthy and he's anything like he was, then you have Debbie Garcia, Domingo Germán. But you have question marks. I think you need another starting pitcher of some quality because I have a feeling all the guys I named, not all of them going to work out. I mean, Cole will be fine. Severino should come back and be okay. Haman, I question. Debbie Garcia, yet, he still has to prove himself. And Kluber, of course, is the next factor. So I think things are in play for Tanaka or James Paxton to come back. I think it's important that the Yankees, sign one of them at least.
And how about you, Doc? What do you think about the signing? I think it bolsters what we've talked about before. They need to get better starting pitching. Kluber was hurt, so this is like maybe a 1-year tryout for him. See if he's still got his stuff. But it's an upgrade to me over even Tanaka and any other pitchers that we got in our starting rotation right now. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's a great deal. I wanted the Yankees since the offseason began to go after Kluber. He's a rare talent, and I don't think great pitchers forget how to pitch. He was hurt, and he's going to be, I think, one of the top Yankee starters. But I don't believe that you can go into a season with a guy who hasn't pitched in a couple of years like him and say that he's definitely going to be the number 2 starter. The Yankees still need a pitcher, and they need a starting pitcher. A lot of people say they need to now address their bullpen. And again, they want to stay under that luxury tax. So they don't have a whole lot of more money to spend, probably about $9 million, maybe $10 million to invest because you have to leave cap room for bonuses and things like that at the end of the year. So I would not take that money and invest it into the bullpen. As much as the Yankees could use more arms, there's more of a history of young guys, off the radar guys having great years as relief pitchers. That happens all the time. What's less common is having a guy become a solid starter. And if I'm the Yankees, the answer is easily Masahiro Tanaka. You find a way to get it done, to bring him back. He slots in as your number 2. Kluber could be your number 3. He could even be your number 2 if he comes back. And my worry with Severino is it's just been years since he was good. He was last really good in the first half of 2018. So that's 3 years ago. He's been hurt, and guys coming back from Tommy John usually takes them a year or so to get their stuff back. So I think he's an exceptional talent, but it's going to be tough if the Yankees depend on him to come back this year and pitch at a high level. I think when you're thinking about Severino, you're hoping he's going to come back this year, and you're really thinking he's going to be better next year.
What about Jordan Montgomery? I left him out. I mean, does he have the potential to join the rotation?
I think he is in the rotation to start the year, and I think he's a nice pitcher. But the Yankees want to fashion themselves as a World Series contender, and I don't know if Jordan Montgomery is someone who you're going to say is going to be one of your top starters on a team that you want to win the World Series.
Yeah,
I think Kluber.
Jordan ain't gonna be. He's not gonna be the one that you say, go and pitch game 3 for us. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, we don't know really. I mean, maybe he improves. Maybe he shows some stuff this year. We really don't know.
But with the bullpen, let me say the bullpen's still strong with Chapman, Britton, Green, and so on. I mean, it's still a strong bullpen. I don't think it's urgent it gets addressed as much as getting a halfway decent starting pitcher.
And not only that, Jack, adding a starting pitcher puts Green back in the bullpen full time instead of bringing him out, having him start, having him do long relief. I mean, he could be. I think he could be a great closer if they just concentrated and put him.
Well, that's what drives you crazy, Mac. The new wave of baseball. I think they're going to continue to do that. Take
Yeah.
a Chad Green, make him pitch 1 or 2 innings as you start, and bring someone in. When they did it in the playoffs, that drove you crazy,
Yeah.
when they did it that time.
So
Yeah.
segueing into that, um, they did come to some agreements with current Yankees right now to avoid arbitration. I mean, you're talking Clint Frazier, Chad Green, Aaron Judge, Montgomery, Sanchez, Gleyber Torres, Urshela, and Voit have all been signed or come to an agreement, so they don't apply for arbitration and end up fighting it out and seeing, whether they hold out or not. So the Yankees took care of business, signing some of their core, which was a good move, I thought, anyway. And this kind of gets your team ready for next year without any distractions.
Well, let's not forget about Gotti. I mean, the bus seems to be leaving without him, and he's always, he's always been on it.
Yeah, I know. But, it comes at a point in the time, Jack, where you got to make decisions. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying Gardner is not valuable. I love Brett Gardner. His attitude, the way he plays baseball, kind of old school. He's constantly out there hustling, even at his age. But there does come a time where you either got.
Let me tell you something, guys. He's going to be at home, and his phone is going to ring during the season when Judge is hurt, Aaron Hicks is hurt. Gotti, are you in shape? Come on down. He says, I'll need 3 days to be ready to play.
That's very possible. What do you think, Doc, about the Yankees taking care of their house? I mean,
absolutely essential. Obviously, I've never been in an arbitration hearing with the baseball players, but I hear that's a brutal process, and it causes all sorts of division. They have to argue why the player is not worth the money that he's asking, and you bring up all the statistics and all the times he's failed. That does not do any good for the player and the relationship with the organization. And what the Yankees did here, they're giving Kluber a chance. So they're saying, like, we care about him and we want to help foster his comeback and hopefully then stays with the Yankees after he has a great year. Making the deal with DJ, taking care of all their players is they're saying, like, yeah, we're building our family and we're making this a place where other players want to come. And the alternative, you sometimes see with teams where they hold out and they become very difficult to deal with. And then other players may not want to go to those franchises. What the Yankees did was they made everybody satisfied. They came to terms with all their players and said, look, let's work together to make this thing positive. We're not going to have any distractions. And now we can focus, laser focus on reaching the postseason and hopefully winning the whole thing.
Definitely agree with that, Doc. I think you got to take care of your own backyard before you invite people in. I definitely agree with that. So, guys, the assistant producer, I should say, puts a question out there in 3 Yankee groups, and we just to see what the pulse is out there amongst the fans, and of course, some of the results I don't agree with. It has a lot to do with demographics, who's what group is in what age group is in these different groups. So I posed the question: what was the greatest Yankees championship team of all time? Right. So in the poll was the 1927 Murderers Row, also the M&M Boys in 1961, and also, of course, I had to put in the 1998 Yankees that won the most games in history. And we'll start with Jack. Who would you pick and why, Jack? What would be?
You want to know something, Mac? It's a roll of the dice. Any 3 are fine. You could change your mind every 3 days. This one. I mean, it's so closely matched. I remember when I was a kid, I called up a talk show like this where they had call-ins, and Mel Allen was on there. And I asked Mel Allen who was better, in his opinion, Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle. He said, it's so close. What does it matter? I mean, and that's my feeling with these 3 teams. Off the top of my head, I saw the 1998 Yankees play. Okay, the 61 Mets were slightly before my time. Obviously, I'm familiar with them. The most legendary team of all, that was the 27 Yankees. The most legendary, Ruth, Gehrig, the 61 team was known for the home run race, the M&M Boys. But what a team that they have. Whitey Ford won 25 games. Elston Howard, had a phenomenal year. I think Moose Scarin had a great year, and on and on. I mean, I like the 98 team, to answer your question, only because of the balance. They didn't have the, I don't want to say power hitters, power players that the 27 or 61 team had, but they were so well balanced. And keep in mind, they had Rivera in the bullpen, the 98 team. They had that element that the other two teams didn't have. Obviously, a Paul O'Neill, you're not going to compare him to a Babe Ruth, a wonderful player. Jorge Posada there, Tino Martinez, guys who were steady, Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams. I mean, they were so steady, the 98 team, so steady. That I give them a tiny edge today, but you can argue me out of that very easy.
How about you, Doc? If you had to, if you wanted to go see the World Series, right, and you got, the ticket to go see the World Series, which one of those championships teams would you pick to go see the World Series?
I think we had a discussion like this a couple weeks ago where we compared Gehrig and Ruth to Mantle and Maris.
Right.
And I think it's a no-brainer. The 27 Yankees, they just dominated like no other team. I think the story was in the 27 World Series, the Yankees were taking batting practice in Game 1 against the Pirates, and the Pirates watched Gehrig and Ruth hitting the ball 9,000 miles each and Tony Lazzari and Bob Musial, and they're saying like, we don't have a chance, and they gave up right then and there, and the Yankees swept through the World Series. Without a doubt, in my mind,
right,
it's the 27 Yankees. The 98 Yankees were lots of fun. Boy, that was awesome. I love that team. Obviously, I never saw the 27 Yankees, never saw the 61 Yankees. But I think the 27 Yankees in history are the greatest team that ever played.
Well, keep in mind, playoff-wise, what Mac mentioned before, the 27 Yankees won the American League pennant, went right to the World Series. The 61 Yankees won the pennant, went right to the World Series. The 98 Yankees had to play 2 rounds. And in one of the rounds before getting to the series, they fell behind Cleveland 2-1. They were up 1-0. They blew the second game and then had a bad third game. And you mentioned, Max, something interesting before. If you think you're going to lose, you don't have the heart of a champion, so on. But Joe Torre later said when they were down 2-1, he was saying, I think we're going to lose. But they came back and won. The same thing Sparky Anderson said in 75 when the Red Sox with Carlton Fisk tied it. He said, he thought they were going to lose the next game. Somehow you feel a certain karma is not going your way. But the 98 Yankees never hit that slump. And then, and they breezed through the World Series so easy, beating San Diego in the 4th straight. It's different eras. I mean,
different eras.
Well, how come the 77 Yankees and 78 Yankees get no love at all?
Because we're talking about the greatest World Series teams in the history of the Yankees. And though my heart is with the 77, 78 World Series, because that's when Yankees finally got back into the World Series and won it after many years of me watching them in dismay. They're the biggest in my heart. I mean, if the poll was 77, 78 Yankees, if that was true, I would have voted for them and I would have been wrong. But, that is where my heart is, Jack, definitely. Just to be obstinate, I'm taking a 1961 championship game with the home run race, and the M&M boys just chewed them up in the World Series. So just to be obstinate. So we do have our Yankees trivia question, guys. So if you've been following us every Saturday, we've been doing the Yankees trivia. And these trivia questions come from A Franchise on the Rise, a great book written by Don Moore, who had a lot of acclaim in this book, where actually had former Yankees and Yankees broadcasters writing forward for him. So it's a very interesting book about the beginning of the Yankees, even when they were not called the Yankees. It goes back that far. So this is a question for you guys. This goes back into the late 1890s. And who was the person who made the $100,000 investment to back the birth of the Yankees?
I flat out don't know. And talk about 1890 baseball.
Yes, sir.
I'm not that up on my 1890 baseball.
We're talking about Yankees history here, Jack. We're not talking about 1890s baseball.
Well, you said it happened in the 1890s,
Well,
right?
that's when they became a baseball.
The 1890s. I mean, I'm stumped on that one.
How about you, Doc? I know you're a historian with the Yankees. You have a guess?
All right, so I think we're talking 1903.
Yes.
When the Yankees became a team, and Colonel Tillinghouse Houston he was involved in something like that, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. Am I in the ballpark?
The Colonel was definitely part of it, but the actual person who backed the Yankees, and he didn't want. In fact, they tried to keep it hush hush because this guy was such a unsavory person. You wouldn't think it by his title in New York, but the guy's name.
I know what you're going to say. I can't think of it, but yeah, he was, I think, the former police commissioner, right?
He was the police chief of New York. His name was Bill Devery. He was arrested on corruption while being in charge of New York police. He won the appeal. He was kind of like an Irish mafia that they were running back then, and he ended up backing the Yankees, and that's how believe it or not, the franchise was born by a New York police chief who had corruption charges and a very unsavory business practices. So the mafia, the Irish mafia, gave birth to the New York Yankees. In other words, it's very.
And I just looked up the guy I was thinking of. He bought the Yankees later on in the Jacob Rupert era. So I was 20 years off.
Well, that's not. I mean, you're in the ballpark. At least you didn't give up, Doc, and I'll give you credit for that.
1890s. Come on. You know who I was going to take a wild stab. Colonel Rupert, just throw a name out there. I
would have gave you credit, Jack. Anyway,
1890s.
Yes, sir.
I could tell you the world heavyweight boxing champion in 1890s, but I couldn't with the Yankees.
Yes, so yeah. So guys, we're going to begin our debate, and the first debate between me and Jack, and that's what we do here every Saturday, is what is the bigger upset in the history of sports between the New York Jets winning the 1969 Super Bowl or the 1980 U.S. hockey team defeating the Soviets to go to the gold medal game against, I think it was Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, Jack.
Finland they beat at the end, but we're talking really about the hockey team beating the Russians in the semifinals.
Right, the Soviet Union at that time. It wasn't just Russia.
Yes, right, Soviet Union, yeah.
You're up first, my friend.
Okay, listen, it was 11 years apart, and this country changes. There's always something going on. I don't have to tell you about society today. I'm not going to touch upon that. But at that time, when the USA hockey team beat the Soviet Union, there was basically a Cold War going on. The Soviets had invaded Afghanistan. The USA was planning on boycotting that Summer Olympics. And the Soviets would later boycott our Summer Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles, because we boycotted theirs in Moscow. But they did show up to Lake Placid for the Winter Olympics in 1980. Before that, their hockey team was their pride and joy, the Soviets. They were thought to be invincible. Their hockey team, their so-called amateurs, dominated the NHL All-Stars whenever they played them. They were better than the NHL All-Stars significantly. And so imagine a group of college kids being put together, assembled to play them. I'm making an argument the other way.
Time out. Yeah. Let me make the argument for the USA, Jack. You make the argument.
You got it. Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is this. Patriotism clouded our thoughts of an upset because my argument the other way, the hockey team had our U.S. hockey team you weren't going to make this argument, Mac, had quality players who would play in the NHL and be very good NHL players.
How do you know I wasn't going to make that argument,
Because
Jack?
you don't want to lose your case. You're too
Well,
smart
first-
for that. You're not going to try to convict your own case.
I would make a comment on that.
But let me just get back. The Jets.
Yes.
The Jets were bigger outcasts than anything in hockey. Bigger outcasts. A number of their players have been cut from the NHL, from the NFL. The Jets and the AFL were considered a Mickey Mouse league by the NFL. It was Super Bowl III, the first two Super Bowls. The Packers easily beat the Chiefs and the Raiders, which confirmed to the NFL's air of superiority that the AFL wasn't even in their league. The Colts were 18-point favorites over the Jets in the Super Bowl. You're not going to get an 18-point favorite today. The Jets barely beat the Raiders to get into the Super Bowl. The Colts had a 13-1 record that year. The one team that beat them during the regular season, they beat them in the playoffs, and then they beat the Browns 34-0 to go into the championship game. Joe Namath was considered a lot of hype and all. Even the Jet coach, Weeb Eubank, who had coached the Colts in the past, the NFL championships, he'd been fired from them. The Colts were so good. People didn't know at the time. Well, they were calling them the greatest NFL team in history, better than the Packers when they were playing the Jets going into the game. And the Colts, in a way, may have confirmed that because 2 years later, the Colts were basically over the hill on the downside. 2 years after losing to the Jets, they win the Super Bowl with the same guys. The same guys that lost to the Jets win the Super Bowl 2 years later, and those guys are past their prime. That's how good they were. And anyone who lived through that figured this was AFL against NFL, and the AFL was considered so inferior. I mean, it would be like the independent league in baseball, where they play these teams like the Long Island Ducks. You're putting their all-star team together and then playing the best 4 out of 7 against the major league's all-star team, and the independent league winning the series 4 out of 7. It was on the magnitude of that upset. To me, that was the biggest, the bigger upset than the hockey team. I just have to say one last thing why it wasn't as big an upset, the 80 Olympic hockey team. Because it wasn't original like the Jets were. 20 years before in Squaw Valley, the 1960 United States Olympic hockey team upset the heavily favored Soviet Union. So all the 80 team did was repeat what the 1960 team did.
Well, Jack, it was a big upset. The Colts were favored, as you said. As all the NFC teams were favored during the Super Bowl beginning. If you look it up, the Vikings were favored over the Chiefs. Almost every NFC team was favored. Believe it or not, the Redskins were favored over the Miami Dolphins. To me, of course, looking at it now, to me, it wasn't that big of an upset, the Jets over Colts. And I'm going to tell you why. The Jets had a very good defense and a very good running game. The biggest thing that sealed the Colts' fate was not that the Colts were taking them lightly. It was Johnny Unitas was hurt, Jack. Johnny Unitas did not start that game. He played later and did lead the Colts to a score. His replacement, perhaps the greatest backup quarterback of all time, Earl Morrall threw for 4 interceptions, Jack. How can you win a game when you throw 4 interceptions? But to put it in perspective, it was a professional football team, Jack. They got paid to play the game, to win the game. That's what they got paid for. There was one upset in sports that is so unbelievable that it still can't be believed. Even now, a group of amateur kids, Jack, I don't care what they were going to be later, but amateur college kids in 1980 came together under a coach who pushed them, motivated them, scolded them, encouraged them, drilled basics and teamwork into their minds and hearts. And to get to the finals and a shot at a gold medal, they had to beat the biggest obstacle in front of them. And it was impossible, Jack. It was impossible. There was no way that they should even be on the same ice with this team. If they even stayed within a couple goals, we would have considered it a great feat, Jack. Because they were playing against the greatest hockey team in the world, period. not the greatest amateur team, the greatest hockey team in the world, a team of veterans who didn't get paid officially, but enjoyed their benefits of their fame, free quarters, free food, all this status as stars. And can you imagine, Jack? They beat, as you said, our professional hockey team. Shut them out. Beat them like, I think it was 7-3 in all their exhibition games. In fact, the amateur Olympic team that went up against them got crushed by the Soviet Union 10-3 in exhibition. So they're going up against a team that's really a professional hockey team if they were over here. And they got crushed 10-3. They shouldn't even be on the ice with them, Jack. There is no way the U.S. could come and beat this Soviet team. So they get in the game, and like they have the whole tournament, they come from behind. They're down. I mean, they're down by one goal, and they tie it in the fourth quarter. And still, we don't believe it. It's going to go to overtime. The Soviets are going to beat them. Come on. I mean, there's no way a bunch of young kids could beat 30-year-old.
Well, there's no overtime.
No, I'm not. I let you talk, Jack. Let me have my piece here.
I had to correct you factually.
So factually, how they were down by one goal in the third period, were they not? Of course, that's factually correct. They came back and tied it and won it at the end, Jack. And that call that was made was not because this guy was trying to hype this team, not because of patriotism. He just didn't believe it either. There is no way they could have won this game. And I'm going to tell you something about Joe Namath, how great Joe Namath is. If you look at his stats in the Hall of Fame, Jack, he's not even near the top quarterbacks in the league. He got in there because he said, I guarantee you we're going to win this game. Well, yeah, your defense won the game for you. Joe Namath didn't deserve the MVP, Jack. That defense deserved the MVP of that game. You could have picked anybody on defense. That defense controlled the Colts, and the reason why they control the Colts, Jack, is very simple. Arguably, the greatest quarterback of all time wasn't playing. So I don't know how you can.
Johnny U was past his peak at that point.
It doesn't. It's still, Jack. I think the Colts beat them during the season, either that following year or not. But he didn't play, Jack. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time didn't even play the game.
Your argument, I love the way your argument is helping me out. Greatest didn't play. Most hockey people, you ask them who the greatest goalkeeper of all time is, they'd say Vladislav Tretiak, who was the Soviet goalie when they played the United States in that game. The coach, the crazy Soviet coach, got ticked off at him. He took him out after one period with the score tied. And the USA came from behind, you said, and won without the greatest goalie of all time facing them. Had he left Tretiak in, it may have never happened.
It may have never happened.
So they weren't facing, the USA hockey team wasn't facing the greatest hockey team of all time,
that's
because they weren't the greatest goalie of all time.
That's totally wrong, Jeff.
Stupidity.
Totally wrong. That backup goalie could have started on any NHL team here in America. That's just crazy to say that. They pulled him because they were scared that the USA was going to beat them. They actually put fear in the greatest.
Pulling Blake Snell out of that game made more sense than pulling Tretiak out early.
What does that happen?
Can you imagine Blake Snell got pulled out in the third inning because of analytics instead of, what was it, the sixth?
What does it happen?
It was crazy to pull out Tretiak out of the game because he gave up one goal the coach didn't like.
Because they weren't supposed to give up goals against these kids, Jack. They weren't even supposed to be on the ice with you. They were supposed to be sitting in the station, up there in the stands with the fans. That's what the Soviet Union thought of the United States amateur hockey team, and so did everybody else in the world, Jack. There was no way that this amateur team was going to beat the greatest.
It was a great, it was a great upset.
Yes, it was.
I'm not arguing that. But it did happen 20 years before with the USA hockey team in 1960, but no one talks about that because patriotism wasn't running as high. If you didn't have the patriotic element with the 80 team, they wouldn't have made a movie, Miracle on Ice and all. But if the Baltimore Colts were called the Soviet Colts, the same players, we would have made a bigger deal out of it.
The only reason why it was hype, Jack, was because Joe Namath was a hype guy. Don't get me wrong. He was a great quarterback. I'm not trying to take anything. I respect Joe Namath. Joe Namath is no Johnny Unitas, Jack. I'm sorry. And if Johnny Unitas was healthy that game, the Colts would have easily won that game.
You gave me a new debate idea, Mac.
Yes.
Coolest New York athlete of all time. Clyde Frazier, Joe Namath. There are few
That's,
baseball players.
that's
Reggie during his time. Well, I don't know about Reggie, but we could dig out a few. Have a little
that
fun
would be
with
that
that,
would be
right?
that would be an excellent debate, Jack.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Doc, you're here with us today. Do you have an upset that you think would maybe even be better than the two we talked about? I doubt it, but go ahead and give it a shot.
All right. So before we went on the air, I was talking with Jack, and I thought I had the greatest upset. And then Jack, the great boxing historian, actually corrected me. So I was going to segue in with, as he was just mentioning a movie, with the fight that occurred on December 25th, I believe it was 1984, when Rocky Balboa defeated Ivan Drago in the Soviet Union.
Good one.
That was a great one.
Yes.
And I was then going to segue in and say, but there was a real fight that was similar to that actually took place in 1938 when Joe Louis knocked out Max Schmeling in the first round. And I was going to say that since Louis had lost the first time they had fought, and you want to talk about patriotism and Germany trying to say that they were the greatest race and pre-World War II, and Louis comes back and knocks out Max Schmeling. I thought that was definitely got to be one of the greatest upsets. But Jack actually corrected my facts because Louis was favored in that rematch, even though he had lost the first time. So let's turn it over to the boxing historian to give us the truth about the.
Yeah, the fight before that, Louis was an overwhelming favorite 2 years before June 19th, 1936 in New York, and Schmeling knocked him out. So that was a massive upset. Upsets, if we're talking boxing, it's hard to believe Muhammad Ali, who was then Cassius Clay, when he won the title from Sonny Liston in 1964 in Miami Beach, that was considered one of the greatest upsets in sports history. Imagine that being considered a major upset, which shows that sometimes we don't know what we have, like when the Yankees left Mariano Rivera in the bullpen in the 95 playoffs against Seattle and let David Cone pitch his arm off. They didn't know what they had. Buck Showalter didn't know what he had in the bullpen. There was Buster Douglas over Mike Tyson. On reflection, maybe that wasn't as great an upset as we felt at the time because Tyson was kind of falling apart with things in his personal life. So, upsets are relative to the time, and we got to observe what happens right after. Because if a heavy favorite loses, but then they continue to dominate right after that, that magnifies the upset. Later we say, wow, they lost in between that. Like I'm not arguing, debating anymore my thing, but I gave an example of the Colts winning the Super Bowl 2 years after losing to the Jets to just show how great that team was. It's not like they fell apart after losing a Super Bowl, which Mac made a great point in a past show. Something happens to teams when they lose a Super Bowl. They're usually not the same the next year. And the funny thing, the year after the Colts lost to the Jets in the Super Bowl, they went from a 13-1 regular season to 8-5-1. So they were affected, and then they bounced back 2 years later.
And Jack, with the hockey team, of course, they went on and won the gold medal, coming from behind again. But that's a once in 4 year thing, so you can't really, and then the players change and that, so you really can't say, that they wouldn't have been as good the following year or the following, Olympics because the whole team normally changes over. And you did mention something before the show. Some of them went on to play the pros, but they didn't have the success as close as they did.
But could I say one thing? I could have debated better. I should have pointed out that before the United States in 1980 played the Soviet hockey team, they beat Czechoslovakia, the USA. The Czechs were considered the second best team in the tournament, and the United States beat them decisively. So maybe that should have warned us, hey, the Soviets are in an automatic lock in this game, the way we all thought.
Well, I don't. You could say Czechoslovakia was second, but if they were a distant second.
Distant second, yeah, I agree.
So, folks, hey, Doc, we're coming up at the top of the hour. We take our break. Do you want to stick around for any more? Or are you good for today, my friend?
I think you're going to get into some topics that I have less expertise on. And so I think I'll bow out and look forward to coming back next week.
Great job again, as always, Doc.
We're going to have a lot of baseball going forward.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, we got a lot of things that are going to be happening. Free agency, signings. Of course, we'll be getting into the baseball.
Well, Doc's in a good mood today. Imagine there was no movement on the Yankee front and we'd all be like this, like, what the heck?
Frustration would set in definitely. So good news with the Yankees, and always great to have Dr. Paul Semendinger in, as I said, founder of the great Yankees blog. Start spreading the news, award-winning author. Check out his Scattering the Ashes, an excellent book. And he's, from what I understand, he's going to be on one of the other Northeast streaming sports shows, talking baseball with Sal Angioletti, I should say, Sal Angioletti. That'll be coming up soon. He does a great job over there, Doc. You'll enjoy the visit. So have a great day. Enjoy your weekend, and go ahead and watch a little football today, Doc. It won't hurt you.
I'll watch some playoffs.
There you go. Have a great day, Doc. Thanks for coming in, and see you again next week.
See you next week. Thanks, guys.
Good week.
So there you go, Jack, the great Dr. Paul Semendinger. What a historian when it comes to baseball.
Oh, yeah.
He's unbelievable. He has a great blog over there, folks.
Yeah.
So you get a shot, go check it out. He's got 11,000 followers plus. I mean, it's a great site, and you'll be impressed, and you'll really enjoy the information they put up there. It's a full cast of segments that he has up there every day. So, Jack, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our little official time out here so we can get ourselves a little back together again, get ready for the next debate that we got coming up, which will be, we're going to talk about, did the Seattle Seahawks hit a bump in the road, or are they headed towards the bottom of the division, Jack? It should be fun. Folks, please join us. We'll be right back after these messages. Get to my, there you go, boom, and boom. Good. Why is it not playing for me? All right. For some reason, it ain't playing. Well, I could sing to you, folks, but that won't work out too well. For some reason, my thing is out here. Let me see if this works. I'll tell you, I love producing the show at the same time.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye. Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversation. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Now we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, though, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Now you're talking. That's music.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Mac and Jack
Like it.
Sports Show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, the great Jack Hirsch. And you are tuned into our debate show, which we do every Saturday, Jack. We just had on one of our most knowledgeable guests that we have all week, Dr. Paul Semendinger, who is founder of the Yankees blog, Start Spreading the News. He knows almost everything about the Yankees, kind of puts me to shame a little bit. I love having him on. He does a great job for us. And now we continue with our debate. But before we do that, let me get to a couple points. Check out our Mac and Jack Sports.com webpage where you can find our sponsors, Fanatics, a sports store that has everything that you need in sports apparel from your favorite team, from all the different sports, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA. Go right to our page, click on the link, it brings you right there. They have some great deals. And, of course, bstbreaks.com, who they're great with memorabilia, Jack. They have great cards. I collected cards as a kid all my life. I still collect them sometimes today. I got a lot of memorabilia. I love doing it. And they also got signed jerseys and stuff like that where you can check those out and make purchases there too. And they're also on our website, Jack. I don't know about you, but I was a big sports card collector, Jack.
Yeah, I used to love collecting baseball cards, especially when I was a kid. Even as a young adult, I had my share of baseball cards. I have a good number of them, around places. And we'd always get a thrill out of getting certain players. We'd open up the pack of cards, and it was, it's just a tradition. Baseball cards a great one, and it's like enjoyable to have. And then you look at on the back of the card, tells you something about the player, the statistics. Nice memories.
I forget the man who just bought a Mickey Mantle rookie card. He paid over $5 million for it, Jack. I went by it. I was going to bring it up on last show. I don't have the notes from that, but a guy just bought the Mickey Mantle
I'm
rookie.
curious just how much his net worth is.
Oh, it's up there, Jack. It's definitely up there.
I mean, if it's Steve Cohen, a $5 billion card.
$5 million, Jack. $5 million.
$5 million. I meant $5 million card. I mean, okay. I mean, it's his money.
Yeah.
But
I don't know what kind of investment that'll bring back. Maybe 20
I
years.
don't know. I mean, he must love Mickey Mantle.
You would think, right? I think his first name was Ron.
Remember the Lewis Schmeling fights before. I mean, if he's a big boxing fan, who knows what he might pay for Joe Louis's trunks. But this isn't paying for the bat, a Mickey Mantle's glove he wore all season when he won the Triple Crown. This is for a baseball card. Baseball cards are great, but our sponsors aren't going to charge you nearly as much.
No,
So
no.
they should look into, our sponsors, what they're selling. They give a very reasonable price, very
Right.
affordable for all our listeners.
So CBS News broke this. Entrepreneur Rob Gough, Gough, just spent $5.2 million on that Mickey Mantle.
And what does he do?
He's an entrepreneur, Jack. Whatever that means. I mean, he's got to have a lot of money to be spending five.
Well, I know he's not a janitor, a school teacher or something. I mean, he's 5.2 million. Okay, listen, if it's his money, listen, he wants to spend it, on that.
Well,
it's
I guess
yeah.
he's an actor, and he belongs to the Billionaire Boys Club, Jack. So that's my assistant producer updating me, making sure that I have the facts straight.
5.2 million. If Mickey Mantle were alive, you could rent him out for a year. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to hang out with you. He'd hang out with you each weekend. You'd give Mick like 50 grand, 100 grand each weekend just to hang out with you.
Just hang out, have a couple of beers. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'm only joking. Listen, people could spend their money. On the surface, let's be honest. Most people who hear that's going to figure that's insane.
Right.
Over $5 million for baseball card. But listen, people have a right to spend their money how they want.
And
if they have it, and if the guy's worth $6 million and he spends over $5 million for baseball card, then I'll say certifiably, something's a matter. But
Right.
And I think of the house you could get for 5.2 million, man.
When it comes to memorabilia, it's what you're worth to pay, what you're willing to pay that makes that worth what it is. That's like with anything, art, whatever you like. So that's what makes it that, that price is what you're willing to pay.
5.2 million, maybe you could buy, you could become a minority owner of a sports franchise.
You would think so, right?
An indoor soccer team. You can maybe be an owner,
Yeah.
You could buy the Long Island Ducks.
Right, arena.
Maybe they might be sold for that amount. Who knows?
So let's get back to the debate, Jack. And as
I don't know about the Ducks. Let me take that back. I don't want to get in trouble with that. I went to a Duck game a couple of years ago and had a great time. They have a great product out there in Long Island.
So we're going to get to the Seattle Seahawks. This year, they kind of fell apart during the end of the year, even though they still won their division. So we're gonna debate whether the Seattle Seahawks hit a bump in the road, or are they headed toward the bottom in that tough division? And I think I go first, Jack, and I'm saying they just hit a bump because, of course, it's just a bump in the road. It's a team with a great head coach, a great quarterback, but like the Steelers this year, they kind of lost their identity. I mean, they weren't as physical as they've been in the past. Seattle is known for its power running game, especially when they had beast mode there. They were an aggressive defense, when they had that defensive line that put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, which they didn't have this year. And, a team is either, because of forced injuries or it changes its scheme and its style, it normally changes the whole product on the field. So they decided to go pass happy, just like the Steelers did, and just like the Patriots were a few years ago when Brady was in his prime. But guess what? That team of the Patriots was not just a good passing team; they were a good running team, great defensive team, and also had a great special team. So I think that when you have a head coach like a Pete Carroll, who was very successful with the Seattle Seahawks, and a good offensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator, maybe something has to happen in that direction. Maybe the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach needs to be replaced, or maybe they should start thinking about becoming a power running team again. Russell Wilson is magnificent, Jack. I mean, off play action pass, he gets out of the pocket. He makes some plays with his legs, but this year they just didn't have it, Jack. And he still won the division. They still ended up 11-5 or 12-4, whatever their final record was. So, teams that have offensive coordinators, and me being one formerly, Jack, and a head coach at the lower levels, I know that offensive coordinators seem to outthink themselves sometimes. They want to get cute. They want to run trick plays. They want to put a system in that scores a lot of points. when basic football is really what wins the games. Kansas City is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not the Kansas City Chiefs, Jack. They're not, they're not a team like that. They weren't built like that. They don't have the tight end and the receivers Kansas City has, even though they got a couple good ones. Now you look at the Titans, the Patriots last year, the Cowboys, the Eagles have all done the same thing for one reason or another. They have left the balance. They don't have any more balance in their offense. And it shows on the field. The Ravens, the Chiefs, the Browns, the Rams are what they are, Jack. They're a team that's schemed for a certain way to play football. And they've built that system, and they've included that scheme with their draft picks and their free agent signings. The Seahawks had an off season. As I said, they still won the division. And I think this is just a bump in the road, Jack. I think they'll be back with vengeance in the next couple of years, maybe next year, although that division is very tough, Jack.
Seahawks are dipping. They're dipping. They're not going to fall apart all at once. They're a little too good. But next year, I could see a 9-7, 8-8 record. The year after that, a 7-9, maybe a 6-10. The Seahawks are dipping down. One bit of news passed by you, Mac, because there's so much news to absorb. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, other extracurricular things in sports. One thing you mentioned that got by you, one little news thing that's important to this debate. Somehow you didn't hear about the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks, Brian Schottenheimer, parted ways with Pete Carroll after 3 years. After 3 years. Russell Wilson is very unhappy about that. Very unhappy because Russell Wilson liked Brian Schottenheimer a lot, and he made it known he doesn't approve of this move. So he's not happy. Brian Schottenheimer met with Pete Carroll, and they had philosophical differences, supposedly. What are the philosophical differences? Maybe Pete Carroll said he's getting more involved in the play calling next year. Who knows what went on behind the scenes? But that happy relationship between Pete Carroll and Brian Schottenheimer that apparently lasted most of the 3 years is now gone. And Russell Wilson, an unhappy Russell Wilson, means you're not going to have a happy Seattle Seahawks team. Now, Pete Carroll is the ultimate cheerleader among coaches, NFL coaches. He's a real rah-rah guy. That style can only last so long. That style is fine when you're in college and you have new recruits coming on each year because after 2, 3, 4 years, your players leave, they graduate, they go to the NFL, or they just move on and you get new players. So you could keep up the rah-rah stuff in college. You can't keep it up in the NFL the way Pete Carroll is doing it the whole time. And players are getting tired of it. You get DK Metcalf. He's high maintenance. That's their so-called great wide receiver. He's having hissy fits on the sideline. It's only going to get worse next year. He keeps saying, DK Metcalf, well, I have to learn to control my emotions. Then do it. Don't just keep saying you have to learn about it. He upsets the whole team. The Seahawks played the Rams in an empty stadium. So everyone would hear DK Metcalf going on and on and on and on. Russell Wilson is 32, not that old. He's had 9 years in the league. He started off great this season. He was an MVP candidate. Then he basically fell apart. Was it physical or was it mental? Seattle just lost it. Remember when they played the Giants? The offensive line was so bad, they made the Giant defense look like all world. We were raving. What a great defense the Giants have. Well, after that game, the Giant defense wasn't so great, but against Seattle, they were. And the Seattle Seahawks just got worse as the year went along. And the red flag was the year before this one. They won a lot of close games the year before. And they started this year winning a lot of close games. And then it turned. Call it law of averages if you want, but they weren't winning the close games. Well, they're not in a rebuilding mode, okay? And they're going to just try to tweak the team. I don't see them being a serious Super Bowl contender. This is not to say they're going to be terrible, but we might be talking about an 8-8 team going forward, which certainly, would be disappointing if you know the history of the Seahawks in recent years.
Well, Jack, I believe it has a lot to do with what division you are in. And good morning to you, Howard, listening out there. I believe I believe it has a lot to do with the division you're in too. Say the Seahawks were in the NFC East this year, they might have just wiped out. I mean, they might have finished 13 and 14-2. I don't know. That division is very tough with the Rams, and you got the Cardinals coming on, and the San Francisco 49ers are a solid team, even though their quarterback was hurt the whole year and their tight end. I think it has a lot to do with the division you're in. I think the Seattle Seahawks, all they got to do is get back. And the reason why they let the offensive coordinator go is because the style changed with the Seattle Seahawks, right? They were a running team when you had the beast mode there. And even last year, their running game dominated, was what set up the pass. This year, as a lot of teams are trying to experiment with, and again, I'll say the Pittsburgh Steelers are the same way. They decided that they were going to, become a pass-happy team, throw the quick timing passes. And that just didn't work, as it didn't work for the Steelers. And their offensive coordinator is also gone, Jack. So
and Anthony Lynn did fire Charger coach, supposedly is in line to be the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks. And
right.
I don't know whether you feel that's a good thing, but
I don't think it's a bad thing, Jack, because I think the San Diego Chargers do a lot of play-action pass. I mean, they got a great young quarterback out there that kind of runs around in the pocket.
Who Anthony Lynn didn't want to play. He wanted Tyrod Taylor to be his quarterback, Justin Herbert as a backup. And Anthony Lynn wanted Colin Kaepernick to try out. He says, I'll give him a serious look to put him on my team.
They never gave him that tryout, Jack. But the point of the matter is I think that what happens is when you become a team, you try to change your scheme of what makes you great. And I think the Steelers are a prime example of that, Jack, where even without Ben Roethlisberger, with two different quarterbacks during the year, second and third string, they still finished 8-8 because they were a very physical team. And that will keep you in the games. Once you start trying to change your scheme and your system, you end up coming away from what makes you good, what makes you a competitive team. And just because your players aren't there doesn't mean you change. And I think, a lot of people are saying, well, Ben Roethlisberger is too old and he's not what he was. Ben Roethlisberger isn't that type of quarterback. He's the type of quarterback that runs off play action pass, just like Wilson was a couple of years ago. And then he throws the ball long. If you're going to stand there back in a shotgun formation, in a spread formation, and try to chuck the ball, either 5 yards for the quick pass and march down the field that way, it changed the whole personality of Seattle Seahawks. So with the firing or letting go of their offensive coordinator, maybe they're saying the same thing I am right now, Jack, that's not who the Seattle Seahawks are. The Seattle Seahawks are a very aggressive physical team.
Well, Russell Wilson was very unhappy about that move. So he obviously doesn't have a problem with how the plays are being called. Certain things, something is going on behind the scenes that neither you or I know about. Okay?
I definitely agree with that.
It might force certain changes, certain moods. And Russell Wilson's not the type of guy to complain much publicly. He just responded when asked about Brian Schottenheimer, and he was frustrated. But beyond that, something is going on behind the scenes there.
Oh, definitely. There's something going behind the scenes in Pittsburgh too, Jack. I just think that Seattle, all great teams hit a bump. I mean, all good, solid teams hit a bump, whether it's between the coaching staff or the players or the way their schemes and strategies are trying to change and evolve. And, when the great thing about Bill Belichick, whether you like the man or not, the man grows and he changes his strategy to his players, and he knows how to do it better than anybody. This year and last year, they fell apart with what they were trying to do because they didn't have the players they had over their Super Bowl run and the type of consistency they had. So he has to retool or rebuild over there right now, and he's going to have to make a decision whether to go back and being that physical team, which he tried to do this year, but he didn't have the players, or whether he's going to go back to the Brady days when Brady matured as a quarterback and ended up becoming having one of the greatest offenses in the history of football. So I think it's a lot to do, Jack, with just retooling with Seattle. I don't think they have to rebuild. I think they have to retool. And I still give them a shot at winning the division next year. So we'll see what happens over there. So, Jack, our next debate is the first round draft pick in sports. What sport is the first round draft pick the most important? And there's only two really, Jack. So you took one and I took the other because the other leagues pretty much have farm systems and stuff like that.
It depends when you're picking in the first round.
Right.
I'm thinking in terms, I'm going to narrow it down. If this is unfair, let me know. The first overall pick in the draft. First,
sure.
Only one player, the number one pick, period. Okay? Because if we're talking about later in the first round, it wouldn't be basketball. The 20th pick in another sport is more valuable, I think, than the 20th pick on baseball, okay, or hockey, and so on.
Agreed.
So let me just say, there's nothing to compare to the number one overall pick for the most part in the NBA. Maybe not this year with Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars, because this is 1 year where the number one pick in football puts separation between himself and number two. There's a distinct separation this year. So, but normally it's going to be basketball because there's only 5 players on the court in basketball. So you get an impact player in basketball, a major impact player. He's going to have more of an impact for his team than any other athlete's going to have for their team. If you can get a LeBron James, let's say he's the number one overall pick, or Michael Jordan, or a Giannis, or Luka, guys like that, they're going to have more of an effect on a basketball team than a quarterback would have on a baseball team, than a quarterback would have on a football team, than a pitcher would have on a baseball team, because a pitcher only pitches, a starting pitcher, once every 5 games or so. And more of an effect than a hockey player. These number one draft choices, the number one overall, Lafreniere for the Rangers. He's a 19-year-old kid, a winger. He's a work in progress. He's not going to come over to the team and be the next Wayne Gretzky and so on. And then a lot of number one overall picks in baseball, some of them don't even make the big leagues.
Exactly.
I mean, they get sent to the minors, but you get the number one overall pick in basketball. He's immediately supposed to make an impact, like Zion Williamson is with the Pelicans. And keep this in mind. The number one, if I need any evidence to back it up, this is it. The NBA has a draft lottery. You don't have that in the other sports, to my knowledge. You don't have that in football. Let's take football, which is the most exciting draft there is. That's the one we most look forward to, the NFL draft. I see these mock drafts for the end of April going on right now.
Right.
And I have to admit, as sick as it is, I look at them. And I imagine. I have fun looking at them.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's on me. But so the overall, but in the NBA, we were talking about tanking. If you're going to tank it, the first 8 teams, it's a lottery type thing. Some have better chances than others, but all 8 teams have a chance of getting the number one overall pick because they realize the NBA, what a powerful pick that is, and they don't want anyone to tank it. So to me, it's basketball for the first overall pick, but I do have to admit, once we get down to about 15, 20, then an NFL selection to me would have a little more impact.
Well, Jack, as I said, there's really only 2 sports you could count because of the minor leagues. I mean, basketball goes right from college into pros, and sometimes there's after the freshman year, the football go right into the pros. Their colleges are basically their farm systems, where unlike in hockey and baseball, you're going to be, in a farm system for the most part. And until they think you're good enough, and a lot of great rookies, as you said, didn't even make it to the big leagues because they spent time in the minors, and for whatever reason they didn't make it. So in the NBA, it was more prevalent, say maybe years ago, as far as the only team to me, the only sport where this was the most important overall first pick because Jack, they football didn't have players coming out early. It wasn't, you didn't have, Saquon Barkley say he wasn't the number one overall, but he was a high draft pick, right? I mean, he's up in the top 3 or whatever you want to say there.
He was number 2 overall.
Right. So, I mean, that's very important to me. I mean, he came in and he was a big addition to the Giants. So I don't know. We have the quarterbacks that come in and are playing right away now. They used to come in, they sit behind the quarterbacks, the older quarterbacks for a couple of years, learn the systems, learn the strategy, learn the speed of the game. That doesn't happen anymore. Jack, you saw Burrows come in, and even though Herbert came in because of injury, he still got put in. Eli Manning, we can go back, to the 2000s where they came in half the season. Tua came in and started at half the season. So NFL to me is right on the par with the NBA right now. And I mean, what's more important leadership role than a quarterback in any sport, Jack? Really? I mean, in NBA, I don't see too many freshmen coming out, or I should say rookies, unless it's a LeBron James or somebody that caliber that instantly becomes a leader of a team. Normally they get drafted high or the first round and they kind of come in and they fit into the team and then become the leader. But right away, you're forced because of the title you have at being a quarterback, you're going to come in there right away and you're supposed to be the leader of the offense. One of the most important positions on the offense, as you know. So it has become more, the NFL has become more and more, it has become more and more a higher status that you are a rookie drafted right away to come into play. There's no more Aaron Rodgers out there anymore that are going to wait. There's no more, Drew Breeses that are going to wait their turn to get out. Right away, Burrows is thrown in. Right away, they throw in Herbert, even though, like I said, it was an injury. Right that year, they're throwing in Tua to see what he's got. And it's a make or break thing right now, Jack. And if you don't make
Patrick Mahomes did wait a year a few years ago.
True,
Alex Smith was.
But Alex Smith, Alex Smith was a very good quarterback. I mean, he did have a good winning team. He did make it to the playoffs. And, but that's still just the next year, Jack. It's not like he's waiting 3 or 4 years like they used to. So, I mean, for the most prevalently now, I agree with you that the NBA, because of the size of the team, that first round draft pick is probably still the most important. All I'm saying is football is getting very close if it's not there yet. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, Jack, we're going to take our last break today. This is our half an hour, second hour break. And we'll be right back with more debates, Jack. I mean, we've got some really doozies coming up.
Let me tell you, I hope that's listeners correct here. I don't think Urban Meyer will take Trevor Lawrence with the first pick. They'll go with Justin Fields. Jets are going to pounce on, Trevor Lawrence if that's the case. I mean,
that's our friend Frankie out there who just come onto the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. And Frankie, if you don't think they're going to take Trevor Lawrence with the first round draft pick.
Well, Urban Meyer did recruit Justin Fields to Ohio State. There's a relationship, so there's an element of doubt. I'm not completely dismissive of what's being said.
I mean, listen, if he does that and Fields is a bust, I mean, what is the Jags going to? What is he going to say? He's got to go with the best available quarterback. They have to take that pick. If they don't, the Jags fans are gonna be up in war over there. So I believe.
But when we get back, I'm just going to make a further comment about that. Where it's not always things as appears, but we'll talk about it when we come back after the timeout.
We'll take that even a little bit more after we get back here from our messages. Stick with us, folks. A lot of good debates still coming up.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
You talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. How come? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Right.
You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're having our Saturday debate show. We're on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. This is our Saturday edition where me and the great Jack Hurst debate the biggest topics in the history and the current topics in sports. We're on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, Jack, a great Facebook page and getting bigger all the time. Going to more outlets. We're there with a bunch of other shows. If you get a shot out there, folks, go and check out the Facebook page at Northeast Streaming Sports. They have all kinds of shows there. Great shows with great hosts. Frankie's been following us today, Jack.
And I just want to make a comment. What was said with the draft. Jacksonville probably will take Trevor Lawrence, but what appears obvious isn't always the case. When Reggie Bush came out of USC, he was considered a 10-tool player, 20-tool player. He was can't miss, future Hall of Famer, future all-time great. That was the talk. So, of course, Houston had to take him. Right. And everyone was in a great mood. Houston, the number one overall pick in the draft. Charlie Cassidy crosses people up. He takes Mario Williams, a tackle, over the great running back Reggie Bush. And the whole city of Houston was in shock, complete shock, how he could do that. So Reggie Bush goes with the second pick to New Orleans. New Orleans celebrates. Reggie Bush turned out to be a good player with the Saints. They won a Super Bowl with him. but he wasn't a great player. He had like an 11-year career, a good career, not a great career. Mario Williams turned out to be the better pick.
Yeah.
The tackle turned out to be the better pick.
And
So
that's
what I'm
true.
trying, and things like this has happened before. When Ricky Williams won the Heisman, he
Great
was the
point.
glamour guy, but the Colts took another running back ahead of him, Edgerton James. They shocked everyone by taking him ahead of Ricky Williams. I mean, moves like this have been made before. And what I'm trying to say is Urban Meyer knows a heck of a lot more about college players than we know, than the rest of the media knows. So everyone that's putting Trevor Lawrence as a can't miss the number one pick, maybe he sees something we don't, in the
Yeah, it's very
players.
true.
And yeah,
It's very true. They got the scouting departments. They got all their
yeah.
history. They got everything on them since they were kids. And you do make a great point. There are a lot of, not a lot, but there have been number one draft picks that have been busts. And when we look at this stuff, and I think if you look at football, Jack, if you look at college football over the last 3 years, you would think that Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in the league. I mean, he could have came out early. He might have been a first-round draft pick last year, but didn't. So, I mean, listen, you are correct that they do know more about football and drafting.
Look at Dwayne Haskins with the Giants. Look how upset the Giant fans were. Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman on First Take are ripping into the Giants for not taking Dwayne Haskins. Stephen A. Smith a couple of weeks ago got on there and said he's ashamed of what he said, and he takes it back. It was a big mistake. Kudos to him for admitting it. We hope Dwayne Haskins might still work out in the NFL. This is
hopefully he does.
He won't. We wish him well, but
Definitely.
obviously taking Daniel Jones, no one could call it the fiasco, that it was called at the time.
Right. So our next debate, Jack, has to do with the Brooklyn Nets. We were talking before as we do our topics, and we normally do them a week ahead of time. So sometimes things change as we come up on our debate.
Yeah.
but as this has, but the question, if I'm correct, was were the Nets underrated or overrated?
Overrated
before the season started. And I think you said no. Is that correct?
No.
So it's your turn to go first, Jack.
Mac, as we get older, especially you probably more than me, saying if I knew then what I knew now, I would do things differently.
Sure.
Right, Mac? No, I'm only kidding with you. I think we're all like that. We're all like that. We look back at points of our life, little things, and say, how stupid could we be?
Right.
What could we have been thinking? And it's part of, youth or this or that. It could be the most little trivial of things. And we'll look back on, and we're probably making moves today. And if we're lucky to live for a lot of years after this, we could look back on how we were doing things today. And I could, say, look, I mean, I can't believe some of the decisions, I made, what I was thinking. This was before the season was over. The red flags were there, but people weren't seeing them. Okay, with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. Keep in mind, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving had been Brooklyn Nets for one full year before this year. We don't think of it that way because Kevin Durant was injured and out for the year, but he was still on the team, just not playing. Kyrie Irving played somewhat, but he missed part of the year with an injury. And we knew last year the Nets weren't a serious title contender. Everyone knew that. We were waiting for KD to come back. So we were basically setting the table for the meal last year. But who would have thought with Kyrie Irving? I mean, maybe we should have seen the signs. If you want to leave LeBron James in Cleveland, not a good thing. He left LeBron James. He demanded a trade. Everyone wants to play with LeBron James. Kyrie Irving didn't want to play with him. He goes to the Celtics. Now he can be a leader. This is his team, a team ready to contend for an NBA title. He, when he emotionally detaches himself from that team, it doesn't work out. He wants out after 1 year. He joins the Nets. And you got to figure, look, Kyrie Irving's from New Jersey. He's been a Net fan his whole life. So he says. This is his dream, to play for the team of his youth that he was a fan of. So he's going to toe the line. Last year during the season, the Nets were kind of dull. He wasn't a menace. Things started in the off season the end of last season when we had the lockout. He was saying things to the effect, let's cancel the season. We had certain signs there, but you figure once KD is there, they're ready to roll. And they got the things in place. Spencer Dinwiddie, they got LeVert, Jared Allen, DeAndre Jordan. They got the complementary pieces on top of the two superstars. They're not overrated. And on top of that, too, the Eastern Division is weak. And the players, Kyrie got to choose his coach with Kevin Durant. They got rid of Kenny Atkinson. Shame on them. But they got, Steve Nash, the guy they wanted. And they just had an excellent all-around team. Durant was hungry. They're ready to roll. Who would have known Kyrie had the issues he has to this extent? We knew he had issues, nothing to this extent. So I don't think they were overrated before the season. But had we known Kyrie was really going to exhibit this type of conduct, and we hope he's okay. We hope this isn't of a very serious nature, But regardless, who would have thought he was going to exhibit this type of behavior? And so I didn't feel they were overrated. But now, as you said, Mac, you made a good point. We set the debate question early in the week, and we decided we were going to stick with it. But James Harden now changes the element because, for the time being, the Nets, are serious NBA title contender with James Harden for now. So I didn't think they were overrated in the beginning, but before James Harden in the beginning of the year, that was at least my feeling.
Well, you said that we didn't know that. I was on another show, Jack, and before we started up this show, and I said that was one of that Kyrie Irving was a cancer. I mean, when you're encouraging team members not to play, and some of them followed, some of them opted out. And the Nets went to the playoffs and they gave it their best shot without a lot of their players, and they played hard. There was no way they could match up with them because of all the team players that opted out because of COVID in that. And he even mentioned that they should start a new basketball league. He wanted to start a new basketball league. Kyrie is one of those type of people I call the people that don't know how to handle fame and success. They always want to be in the news for the wrong reasons instead of going out there and doing what he does best. And he's very talented, Jack. He's a very talented basketball player. There's no taking that away from him. He did win a championship with LeBron. But as you said, he wanted to be traded because he wanted the fame, Jack. He wanted to have his own team that it wasn't because of LeBron they won. It was because he was there also. And he was very jealous of LeBron's fame and doesn't know how, even though LeBron comes out and makes strong statements today, even today, Jack, he goes out there, he loves to play basketball. And that's the thing that makes watching LeBron James, to me, great, because he really enjoys the game. Kyrie doesn't look like he enjoys the game. He gets hurt, he says he's not playing, so nobody else should play. And Durant, to me, is a fool for even wanting to play with Kyrie. Without Kyrie, they could make a run at the title with just Durant and the pieces they had in place because they had a very good young team, Jack. A lot of people said that they were going to compete for the Eastern Conference title without them too. So why I say they were overrated, and to me they still are, is because to win in any sport, you have to have chemistry, Jack. You have to have a team that wants to play together, at least on the court, Jack. And I don't see that happening right now. I don't see the Nets playing together as a unit. I see three individuals that are great basketball players in their own right. I mean, Durant, probably one of the best in the league, probably the best on the team. Harden, who's an unbelievable scorer, You know, the man has been setting records and may end up at the end of his career maybe the biggest up there in the top, at least top 5 scorers of all time if he's not now. Kyrie Irving, a very dynamic athlete that knows how to play basketball. But when you get down to being successful, Jack, you have to have that chemistry. You have to have that two players that maybe are leaders, or one player that's a leader and the other ones that will want to follow. I don't think people will want to follow Kyrie Irving. Number one, he's not the best basketball player on the team with Durant there. And number two, he's too much of a distraction from the team. They're not going to be talking about the team. They're going to be talking about what Kyrie does, or what he's going to do, or what he's going to say, or how he's going to act. As we know, he just got fined by the Nets. He's going to have to pay a hefty fine. If I was them, I would suspend him on top of that, just to show the team and to show the league that they're serious about becoming a team. As you mentioned, they got rid of Atkinson, a great young coach.
Penny Atkinson, yeah.
Young coach. And they get a coach a player that's never coached in basketball before, because maybe they can kind of lead him around a little bit. Maybe he doesn't have the authority
Well, Kevin Durant knew him from Golden State.
Understand,
so, yeah.
But maybe he doesn't. Maybe they don't have that type of respect bringing in a head coach of the NBA over there. Maybe a Doc Rivers or somebody like that who knows basketball, has been a coach. So we take a guy that was a great, to me, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Steve Nash, a leader of the offense, could do assists, could shoot, could take over a game if he had to. So they bring in a young coach that is never coached before. So that, again, the limelight doesn't go to the coach. The coach is a great coach. We're a great basketball team.
Well,
we're a great player. So I think they were overrated, Jack. I think the 76ers are just on par with them. I think the Celtics are just on par with them. I think the Bucks might be better than them this year. We'll see. But
even with James Harden?
Yes, even with James Harden, there's only one basketball, Jack. Only one basketball.
Okay, there's an X factor, Mac, that because you brought up the thing about coaches, Steve Nash, great player, but inexperienced as a coach. There's a big X factor, especially with the Harden deal. Steve Nash's assistant, I don't want to say his main assistant because he gives him all equal respect that way. Mike D'Antoni.
Right.
D'Antoni was Steve Nash's coach when he played for the Suns. That was his coach. They have a very close relationship. He's like a mentor to Steve Nash. Mike D'Antoni was James Harden's coach at Houston.
Right.
James Harden likes him a heck of a lot. Of a lot. So that's going to take a lot of pressure off Steve Nash, because Mike D'Antoni is going to be dealing with James Harden directly. And James Harden has so much respect for Mike D'Antoni, he's not going to get into it with Steve Nash. They'll work things out in that sense. You talked about the suspensions. That really kills me when you think of the amount of money. So over $400,000 a game, over $800,000 for the 2 games he missed. When I think of all the young men who play in the playgrounds for recreation for hours on end, who are making only a small fraction of that for a whole year for their income, in their regular jobs, you would think Kyrie would say, I'm in no mood to play at all. I'm going to play these games, and I'm going to take these 2 games, a salary, games I would normally sit out, collect the money, put a bunch of kids through college with that, because over $800,000 after taxes, that's about $500,000 still on the table. And he might think to himself, okay, I'm going to pay $50,000 per kid, 10 kids, help them out with their tuition. I'm going to buy someone a home. I'm going to help out maybe my closest childhood buddy, buy him a car. That's with the money, to let that money just go. But instead, when the guy's making over $30 million a year, he figures, oh, okay, I lose $1 million, I'll make up the rest. And I don't think they, quite get it. You're right in that sense. You become spoiled. Yeah. You become spoiled rotten. you
Yeah.
know, to let that money go. It's his money, but what it could have been used to help other people, the money that he just is allowing himself to lose, that he's basically throwing away.
Yeah, Jack, again, I think that there are some in all sports, not just basketball, when these kids come into a professional sport, they're in shock. They don't really they take all that money they have and they spend it and they end up doing crazy things and they can't get out of the hood. It's hard to get out of the hood, Jack, in a lot of circumstances. It's hard to get rid of your old friends because you care about.
I don't think that's an issue with Kyrie, though.
I don't either, but I'm just saying it is an issue with players. You were talking about young players that maybe are doing this recreational, and some that are trying to become that good where they can go to college or whatever, as you were mentioning. I just think that the Brooklyn Nets have the team that could go to championship and maybe win it. I agree with that as far as talent goes. But talent isn't the only thing that wins in any sport, Jack. You have to have that chemistry. You have to have a leader, a coach that can bring this together, as you saw Phil Jackson did with stars. I mean, these guys all were stars, but even though they had their problems, when they got on the court, they worked as one. And this is very important, as you know, in any sport, to have that chemistry, to go after one common goal is to be the best team in the league. Well, right now, they don't all have that one common goal. And that's very hard to put together when you have people that are that good. So this is why, even though a lot of people take something away from Phil Jackson saying, well, look at the teams he had, but, to keep that together. Joe Torre, the Yankees, is another great example. Yeah, to keep that together is very hard to do when you got that big personality, that big of a star.
Kevin Durant the most, because when Kyrie Irving was out before they got James Harden, I'm watching him with the net team, and he seems so happy on the court. He was being a leader to the younger players there. And what's going to go down here with Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, who wants to go down as an all-time great? He's just one of three. He's not a centerpiece player. Okay? I mean, and he wants to be better than LeBron James, but LeBron was the man at Cleveland.
Right.
And when he went to Miami the first year, it was handled wrong. He was on an even field with Dwayne Wade. But then LeBron gradually transitioned into being the main guy. And now with the Lakers, and all due respect to Anthony Davis, LeBron's the centerpiece guy. He's considered the leader of the team. And Kevin Durant's not going to be a leader of this team with James Harden and Kyrie Irving. He's going to be one of three. And it's not going to be great for his legacy. And listen, when he was with Russell Westbrook at OKC, he didn't take charge. Then he joined an established Golden State team, and people are saying, they were ready to win. They won without you.
Right. So, I mean, listen, I think they were a little overrated because of the moves they made when they already had a good young team. And just adding Durant, as I say, Jack, I think they would have contended for the Eastern Conference. But anyway, so we're down to like 8 minutes, Jack. So we got one of these two that we'll do, and I'm gonna start. I'm gonna go with the most craziest topic that a lot of people are gonna think I'm nuts in saying this, but we're gonna go. Will the Cleveland Browns beat the Kansas City Chiefs? And you want to know something? I'm going out on a limb, and people are going to think I'm nuts, but I think the Cleveland Browns will beat the Kansas City Chiefs.
That'll be a best up pick of the year, Mac, if it happens.
Oh my God, yes! And I'm going to tell you how they could do it and what they should do. What I think anyway they should do. First of all, they got the best running back duo in the league. With Chubbs and with Hunt, and these two can catch the ball. They can run the ball. Cleveland will control the clock, Jack. They will keep the Kansas City Chiefs off the field. And if they need to score, they do have the weapons to score deep. But they're not going to do that, Jack. What they're going to do is they're going to control the clock and make Kansas City's chances to score even harder. They're also, what they're going to do, Jack, is they're not going to play the run against the Kansas City Chiefs. What they're going to do is they're going to play the pass. They're going to make the Kansas City Chiefs run the ball. They're going to bring in extra defensive backs. And they're going to have Patrick Mahomes, if he does throw, he's not going to throw over the top this time. They're going to have people deep for Hill. And they're going to make the Kansas City Chiefs slow down. And once you make a team slow down and have extra plays, they end up having the chance to make a mistake. That much the percentage increases. So the Cleveland Browns, Jack, remind me of a team way back in the 2000s going up against the mighty Patriots, the undefeated team in the Super Bowl, and they didn't have a chance, Jack, because the Patriots had the number one offense in the league. I think they even rank higher than Kansas City's offense does right now. They were the New England Patriots. And the Giants put together a great running game. They did play action pass. Of course, they had a little luck on a couple catches there, but that's part of the game. And I think that if the Cleveland Browns play their style of offense and make a little adjustments on defense and make the Chiefs run the ball, which is what I would do as the head coach, they're going to win this game, Jack.
I wouldn't be completely shocked if it happened because you make a good argument. I don't think so. You gave the New England Patriot example the year the Giants beat them in the Super Bowl. And the Giants, and they gave them a good game the last game of the regular season. The Patriots were 18-0 at that point when they played the Giants in the Super Bowl. And the strain of trying to be unbeaten took something out of them, I believe. I mean, it put so much pressure on them each week. And the Chiefs have certain advantages over the Browns. The Browns have been in a must-win situation virtually the last few weeks. The Chiefs haven't. If there's any optimism for the Browns, it's this. The Chiefs have been winning and cruising all year long, but they haven't really been dominating. They've been doing enough to win. If you've been betting on the Chiefs using the point spread, you've been losing your money this year. You've actually been losing your money. But the bottom line is, look, the Chiefs need this game more. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They're well rested. They're the ones who are coming off a bye. Cleveland had a very emotional game against Pittsburgh last week, even though the Browns got off to the big lead and then coasted. There was a ton of emotions going into that game. That was like their Super Bowl. Now that they beat the Steelers for the first time in ages, in Pittsburgh, in a playoff game, they hadn't won a playoff game in the longest time. The Browns are they're accomplished. They're accomplished. You ever hear the term, well, the rest is gravy. The rest is a bonus, what they do. That's basically it. You want to talk about the quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield has had a good year. He's had a good year. He's not anywhere near Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback. Baker Mayfield could manage the game, could play a good game, but he's not going to be a difference maker. They're not going to win the game because of Baker Mayfield. They're going to win the game because of their defense and their running game. But the Chiefs could, if they run into trouble, Patrick Mahomes could win the game for them. Rolling out, throwing great passes. And I feel the Chiefs you talk about the running game of the Browns. It's a little better than the Chiefs' running game, but the Chiefs' running game isn't too shabby. But when you look at the Chiefs, receiving core, the Browns isn't shabby with Jarvis Landry, but the Chiefs' receiving core, it's just better. And I just feel they're better teams. Sometimes we overanalyze things, and we look for all the reasons why one team can beat another. But at the end of the day, it's a question of, to me, how long the Browns could stay in there. How tough a game could they give them? Can they lose a close game to the Chiefs? Of course. Could they beat them? I doubt it. When push comes to shove, the Chiefs will find a way to win the game if it's a close game.
Spoken like a true believer, Jack. So, you're probably right, but I'm still picking the Browns anyway, Jack.
Right, well.
I'm hoping the coach listened to me today because,
Good year for the Browns. Now, if the Browns win, wow. I mean,
yes, that would be exciting, wouldn't it?
They could go to the Super Bowl somehow.
So, Jack, that's it for the show. Tomorrow we have our NFL Football Sunday where we have fantasy football expert Anthony Servino.
We make our predictions for tomorrow's game.
Yes, we ran out of time today, Jack. We had a busy show. But Anthony Servino, and we also have Robert Butler from Sports Scope Great guest, great time, has a lot of knowledge. So we'll see you all tomorrow, 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. to 10, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Join us again tomorrow, folks, and we'll see you. You have a great day today and enjoy the games tonight, Jack, today and tonight.
Yeah, 2 good games today.